this sort of high velocity creative testing is so essential to the growth of so many different companies. And it's very idealistic, actually, to sort of think that you can just opt out of that conversation and be like, nope, in our meeting, we decided that our customers like black, blue, and red. And so we're just using black, blue, and red. That's what resonates. And it's like, well, none of that's tested. You haven't tried anything. That's just an idea that you had. I mean, sympathy I got. I also have a big dose of kind of reality. It's really what we're trying to talk about here, yeah? Hey, what's up, everybody, and welcome to Growth Mentors, the podcast where we share snackable growth hacks, strategies, and best practices in how to drive maximum marketing impact and grow your bottom line. I'm your host, Matt LeBlanc, and today we are going to be talking about the how-to of high-velocity creative testing with Monique Charles, a creative director at Jump 450. Although Monique was born a creative powerhouse, she actually began her career as a media buyer before moving into strategic creative roles and focusing on bottom-of-the-funnel DR efforts across social platforms. She is well-versed in iterative creative testing, providing her clients at Jump with strategic approaches to unlocking performance and discovering what elements, concepts, and pain points will actually move the needle. What's going on, Monique?
Hey, Matt, thanks so much for having me. This is my bread and butter. I could talk about this for hours, as you know, so I'm super excited to dive in here today.
Fantastic. Yeah, me too. Let's just jump right in. Let's talk about why this topic is important to talk about. Yeah?
Definitely. So first off, why do you need to be making iterations on your creative? Why is this important? One concept can be fleshed out different ways, right? There are 10 different ways to skin a cat. One concept can lead to another. It can branch off. It's important to think of, unlike with like regular traditional art, where you make your painting or you do your performance and that's it. With performance creative, you're always thinking of each concept or each asset as a jumping off point for something else. Which version of this concept or of this asset is going to scale? And then what are you learning from that can take you to your next round of testing?
Exactly. And to even sort of pull back from the concept just a little bit, I think that what makes this most important to talk about is that creative testing is going to be the thing that scales your marketing efforts online.
Right.
Without good creative that resonates with your audience, none of the tracking or campaign optimizations or any of your other efforts are going to make a difference. So it really kind of boils down to what creative are you testing? What audiences are you able to unlock with that creative? And the other reason that I would say that this is so important to talk about is because so many companies are missing this and they really don't even realize it. I can't tell you how many creative teams I come across who think they have a sort of performance or testing mentality. And then when the rubber really meets the road, I would say the two kind of common issues that we come across are overly strict brand guidelines and kind of an artist's mentality, right?
Yes.
Let's just unpack those two ideas, right? The brand guidelines and the artist mentality.
Yeah, I mean, and it's with a painful heart, right? That we have to talk about the brand guidelines, because at the end of the day, brands are like personalities for business. We all feel a certain way about, Nike. We all have certain memories related to, our favorite fast food restaurant. But even with that, when it comes to social media and just the internet and testing and finding what works, what your audience is going to connect with, what's going to grow your audience, you have to test. And you have to test outside of, the 5 colors of your brand. You have to test outside of even sometimes language. There's the whole world outside of your brand, and it can be very limiting sometimes. So while I believe in brands and the importance of them, I know that it's important to also play a little bit outside of the limits of those.
Absolutely. And I will be even a little bit more blunt to say that, I'm not here to argue the sort of merit of a brand identity or rather against a brand identity or brand guidelines. I think this is almost a symptom of like I say, this artist mentality. The artist mentality is creation, not testing, right? An artist makes one of one artists and creators and influencers are sort of encouraged to, make something that you like, that you think is good, and then let it connect with people that are like you, right? Which I think at its base, there's a place for that in this conversation, but we're trying to unlock a lot of different audiences, a lot of different demographics. So it's a different mentality. And specifically with the brand guidelines, the kind of, I would say, guidelines, the strict guidelines that I have come across is, imagine like a running shoe company that says, we're a running shoe company, but we are not going to show people running in our shoes in our ads.
Right.
Okay, that's like I would say an apples to apples hypothetical comparison to actual brand guidelines that I have come across with clients before. They can have all sorts of ideas about why this is so important to don't show somebody actually running in the shoes, but kind of what they're sort of missing, I think, is just the basic human psychology piece, which is like, if I'm buying a pair of running shoes, I want to see somebody running in the shoes.
I think every single performance creative can talk about this for hours. I think that this is something that we have encountered so many times. It's even, 1 degree shade of blue different. If it's even the color that the talent is in the ad is wearing, we like color psychology is something that's super important to me. So even when I'm iterating on ads, I'm thinking about what color is the talent wearing. And I've gotten pushback on that, where we're working on something and we see that like this blue shirt is really working well. So we try a couple more talent in blue shirt. And then they're like, wait a minute, this is not our blue. We can't. And it's like, okay, so we're seeing trends here. Money is coming in. And
Right.
it happens, unfortunately, more times than we'd like to admit, where internal teams leave money on the table because they're more loyal to their brand guidelines than to understanding like what their client base is interested in and growing that.
Yeah, no, that's such a great point. Specifically about the colors, you just made me think of, it was actually a footwear brand that I was working with.
Mm-hmm.
Although my running shoe example was hypothetical, this was a footwear brand. We're approaching Black Friday. And so the idea was that their internal creative team was going to send us the Black Friday ads. And then our idea was that we were going to iterate on those. So what ended up happening was we got one Black Friday static asset from their team.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, this went along with very lofty goals about, kind of numbers that they wanted to hit and how they wanted to scale during the holiday season. We got this one ad, right? And so we have a meeting and we're trying to talk to them and talking to different parts of their company too, had to talk to the creative people and then talk to some of the media people and say, we need more flexibility than this. And so they ended up reversing the colors and sent us 2 ads. Right. So a little bit of flexibility, not much. We kind of took it upon ourselves to go in. We took this one static ad and we created, I would say, probably 10 different iterations with different color backgrounds, different color text, really, really basic kind of stuff, a couple of cinemagraphs.
Mm-hmm.
And it was not a comfortable conversation to be having at all. When we sent them back, we got a lot of pushback on this stuff, but we eventually did get the go-ahead to run a pretty good sized batch. I would say probably 6 to 8 different ads between the statics and the cinemagraphs. And the sort of moral of the story is, not only did all of the iterations that we pushed for, not only did they beat out the original assets in every case, but we had enough creative, we were able to scale, and we gave them their biggest Black Friday season historically. I would say that definitely opened up the conversation a bit kind of after that fact, but that's like a very extreme example of why this is so important to be talking about kind of loosening up on a lot of these like really strict elements. And I think what we want to kind of express today is how you can take one asset and turn it into 1,000.
Right. Yeah. Yep. Those are the stories that I love to hear, when they loosen up a little bit and try something and it works, and they at least acknowledge that, and that it opens up the conversation and you get to have a little bit more wiggle room.
Absolutely, because you're never going to know what moves the needle until you test. So let's jump in and explain how we think about testing different creative elements. And if you're listening to this and you like the ideas that we're sharing here today and you want to access Jump's blueprint for the ultimate creative multiplier, You can find that in the link below in the description. We will give you a ton of different ideas to kind of go down a list and try yourselves with your own ads. But I would say, Monique, let's kind of jump in here before we go like really into the weeds on different iterations. Let's kind of break down the anatomy of an ad, like
Yeah.
what different elements, what different areas we iterate on. Yeah.
Definitely. So there's always the hook, which is the first 3 seconds of the ad. With that, there is the text. So the actual, what is this person reading on screen? And then there's the picture behind the text. If we're talking, a video ad. So there's the initial copy that's on that first frame, along with like a visual. There's the body of the ad, which is after the 3 second mark. Your story arc happens there. It could be problem solution. It could be, flipping the script or like debunking myths. It could be educational. You have your body there. And then you have your CTA, which is your call to action, which is your last word, your last admonition to your audience to join in.
Absolutely. And I think we could actually even break the body up like a little bit further. So it's kind of like the hook, the stop, the scroll. The body is kind of drawn an emotion, present a solution, right? And then call to action.
Yes.
So kind of like 4 basic tenets of creative and 4 different areas that you can kind of like think about, like how are we testing different variations in these 4 different areas. So let's start with the hook, just stopping the scroll and kind of break down some of the broader ways that you can iterate on a hook.
Yeah, definitely. I think the first thing it has to do is be disruptive. There has to be something about it that's going to catch somebody's attention, and that varies greatly. I think that a mistake that some creatives make is that they think it has to be shocking, right? It doesn't always have to be shocking. If you have a really upscale bedding brand, I mean, I don't think shock really comes into that. But for this person of this super elevated taste, it has to be that much more, luxurious or appealing to this aesthetic. So you want to differentiate yourself from some of the other brands in that space, not just the general broad over, like, how can I make my ads as shocking as possible? So think about this space, think about your competitors, and think about how to differentiate your space, differentiate yourself. You can be thinking of graphics, right? If you're doing like a text ad, kinetic text, it could be in the movement. It could be in even where the product is placed. Is it somewhere unexpected? For a bedding brand? It doesn't like have to be in a bedroom. It could be in the mountains. And so like, what is that juxtaposition saying?
That's a great point. It really is kind of like a spectrum of like what counts as a hook, right? Because you can go that really kind of like shocking extreme end of the spectrum, but then you've got a lot of other things that are maybe a lot more subtle that absolutely hook people in, that are a lot smaller, like, something behavioral, like unboxing, showing just, somebody pulling something out of a box, very intriguing, makes you kind of like lean in for it. So I would say I sort of broke the hook up into a couple of different areas, right? So you're looking for something unexpected, relatable, engaging. You could do visuals, graphics, something behavioral, or different messaging, right? So an idea of different messaging is, I feel like lots of times trying really simple conversational language in headlines, things that are easy to digest, right? And I would say that across the board, that is sort of like my broad point of view, that on social media, that's kind of it's going to outperform like very complicated or dense language, right? But something that is scroll stopping is maybe using one sort of fancier word or longer word that kind of breaks the pattern. We actually had a food and beverage company that was using the word excessively in one of their top performing headlines. They tried this headline across a lot of different styles of creative, and it always performed really well. And at the actual headline, it was a bunch of like 3, 4, 5 letter words, and then excessively was sort of like the key word, and it hooked your eye. It did. I think that's kind of a great example of the spectrum that you're talking about. Yeah.
And I think so excessively had its moment, or at least for that brand. There was also millennials, right? There was a time when in any hook, if you are iterating and you want to find a way to push your creative a little bit further, just saying that millennials have an opinion of this, or millennials use this, or millennials are going crazy, that
Yes.
was shown to improve performance. And then the word obsessed, right? I am obsessed with this, or millennials are obsessed with there's always like a certain word. And I talk about it with, my performance friends a lot. Like, we are wondering when the word obsessed will lose its hold on people,
Mm-hmm.
because it really did have a moment there. It was very emotional.
No, it's such a great point. It's like getting into the trends of using certain words, right?
Mhm.
So we are going to dive deeper into hooks specifically a little bit later on, but I think like let's just go through some more of these kind of like basic elements, the anatomy of the ad, and kind of talk about a little bit about kind of how we think about iterating. So moving on to drawing an emotion, right? So pain points and emotions are the things that sell products and services.
This is a big one for me. So with emotions, you have like kind of like two ways you could go, positive or negative. So with this one, you want to
Yeah.
think about what are all of the positive emotions that your brand could elicit. And then on the flip side of that, it's what are all of the negative emotions that the absence of my brand will leave you in. And so, like, right there, if you think
Yeah.
of like 5 great things that someone could feel after having used your product or because of your service, and then like 5 terrible emotions that somebody will feel, due to situations that they're in the absence of your product or service, right there, that's 10 different iterations, right? 10 different
Yeah.
ads at least that you could be thinking about.
Something important to call out about negative emotions in particular, because I feel like the thing that I hear over and over again, we just want to focus on the positive. That's the line. We just want to focus
Yeah.
on the positive. We don't want to try the negative angles. We just want to focus on, a positive sort of approach. And it's such a seemingly harmless preference, but why it's important to call out is that it goes against really basic human psychology, right? Because we're looking for these relatable problems. We're looking for relatable problems that resonate with people. So if I suffer from bad razor burn, guess what gets my attention? Cringy
Right.
close-ups of razor burn,
Right.
right?
The negative lead up and the positive lead up. I think those, if you are looking to iterate and find out like what, and also just from a psychology perspective, we run away from things. We don't run towards things, right? So if we see that razor
Yes.
burn there, we're more motivated to think about ourselves than if we see beautiful smooth skin.
Yes.
Of course, it's always open to testing, but I know that that's one of the very first like levers that we pull here. Do we want to showcase the negative or the positive?
Exactly. It's the reason that before and afters are so compelling, right? We want to understand the transformation or the effects. I had a fitness brand that I was working with. We're really trying to get in touch with not just like high level athletes, but there was a big audience in casual gym rats. This was also kind of on the heels of the pandemic, and so a big part of the audience that they were trying to connect with were couch potatoes, right here. So people who had gotten like kind of soft around the middle during the pandemic, and they were trying to sort of motivate them like, like, hey, get back in shape, start our program. And the thing that we kept hitting against was, they were very focused on running not only super polished kind of commercial assets, but they wanted to show this kind of, I would say, impossible level of physical fitness, like superheroes basically in their ads. And they wanted to only talk about toughness. There was like a lot of sensitivity around toughness. And, just from a personal standpoint, it's like, if I'm just trying to get off the couch, that's super intimidating to me. We're not connecting with that couch potato audience, and we're not even connecting probably with a lot of the gym rats, because it's an intimidating offer, right? So
Right.
what we did was we tried to show some kind of UGC, like transformational story kind of creative, and really kind of soften the language into something language that was more relatable, kind of more inviting. And we saw really fast performance on a couple of video assets that we put out. The problem was they couldn't get themselves to sort of embrace it holistically. You know, we left these ads running for quite a while as our top performing ads. During that time, we continued this discussion of, you know, continuing down that path and like fleshing out more assets. They took them down and, you know, decided that they were going to find a way to the top of the mountain through different techniques. In my time, I did not see them get there, but a great example of kind of like why it's important to like really kind of listen to your customer, the emotional kind of like points that bring them in, and what is actually going to resonate with them.
Exactly, exactly. And I think that using that, you'll know the best way to present your brand as the solution um, for
Yeah.
for those emotions, or as the gateway to those emotions if it's positive, right? So even with like a skincare brand that I was working on, we tested, you know, acne, scarred skin, peeling skin. You know, we had the big DR impact text of like, are you, does this look familiar? Have you experienced this? Followed by the product. It didn't work. In that case, people really wanted to see beautiful skin, and their response was, "How do I get that?" So when we showcased the product afterwards, they connected with it better. Understanding that when you present your brand, it is an answer to that emotion that you've kind of like immersed your audience in first is super important.
That's such a great example. Yeah. So, I mean, not only a great reason to be testing the positive and negative kind of emotional drivers. Yeah. When you're really kind of presenting your solution, showing how the purchase is going to make you feel, you know,
Mhm.
showing what the experience is going to be like, what the relief is going to look like, showing those like super basic, relatable experiences that people are going to be able to easily kind of put themselves in that position. Monique, I had one sort of like more micro example about presenting a solution here that I wanted to go into about product shots.
Yes.
When shooting a product shot, test it with a hand in it. I worked with a grooming brand, and when we eventually started testing hands in our product shots, we found that the product shots with hands in them outperformed every single one of our product shots that did not have a hand in it. I remember at the time feeling like, God, you know, we're really kind of like sciencing some of the fun out of the creative when we're using terms like, you know, it
Mhm.
performs better when there is a human element present, which is the way that we would talk about it in the meetings.
Right.
But it is so true. If you have a human element sort of present, it's that relatable kind of thing when you're presenting your solution. You know, it's like, is there a hand? Is there a foot? Is there a person's face? A part of a body? You know, something. It's so much more like engaging or warm or reachable versus just looking at sort of like a cold standalone product.
The product itself. And I think with that also, if your product comes in a variety of colors or flavors, present all of them. It's not necessarily going to be your best selling color or flavor. People in the wild, like on the internet. So we had a clothing company, for example, where the prints were what got people most excited in the platform on Facebook. Where are the clicks coming from? How are people getting to the website? It was all related to the products with prints. But once they actually got to the website, people were buying solids. They needed to know that they had to be okay with that dichotomy, that not to make any drastic decisions based upon the fact that there were like two parallel things happening. So the fact that people were reacting better to prints, it's not an indication to necessarily get rid of all of the solids on in your product line. And the fact that people are buying solids and not prints, it's not an indication not to push those prints in social. There will be differences between how people buy and what they connect with online.
Yeah, that's such a great example. Really paying attention to your audience, you know, what they're clicking on and what they're buying. Moving down to the call to action here.
Yeah.
I feel like just a couple of notable points to go over. Yeah.
Yes. So with your call to action, for me, the most important thing is that if you're telling them learn more, don't bring them to a checkout page, right? Think about exactly what you want your client or what you want your audience to do. If you want them to like get clear skin now, or like unlock their best skin, and that's your call to action,
Mm-hmm.
have that checkout sequence right at the top. Make it easy for them to get to exactly what they need. Your call to action should literally only be what you want to come next. If you want signups, if you want, email addresses, if you want more information, don't try to get too creative here. Stick to the script as much as possible.
Yeah, no, that's such a great point. I mean, you're connecting your solution to the landing page, right? And setting up what
Yes.
users should expect when they click on your ad. But a lot of tests that I've seen with call to action has been broader, sort of more brand language versus what
Yeah.
you're talking about, which is super direct language, which is definitely the trend that we see work kind of across the board. I think the other thing that you sort of touched on in so many words was, don't confuse people about what they're clicking on. Don't confuse people about the message that they're clicking on, and don't confuse them when they sort of get to a landing page that does not line up with their intent, with the language that they clicked on. Other things to obviously test with CTAs are the aesthetics, the colors, the font, the placement, all that good stuff. And again, if you're interested in learning more about, just getting more ideas on how to iterate on like really small elements like that, you can click on the link below to get a copy of our blueprint for the ultimate creative multiplier. And give you a lot of great information in there. But diving a little bit deeper down the rabbit hole here, I wanted to kind of focus on that hook section, right? The pattern disruption, the first 3 to 5 seconds of your ad, and maybe try to give an example of just like how you can iterate on a hook, one idea of a hook in so many different ways, and how we kind of approach it. Yeah.
Yeah. So for us, if we have a hook that's working, the first thing we're gonna look at, one of the first things that we're gonna look at is the language. So like, what is the general concept that we're pushing here? And are there different ways in which we can say the same thing? How do we pull out what's actually working here? The other thing that we might do is leave that hook, that copy there, and leave the initial copy and try a different image with it. So this might be a different talent. This might be showing the product in a different way. If it's like a skincare product, maybe in the first one we're showing someone applying it, we'll say, okay, this hook is working. Maybe we want to show a close-up of the texture. Maybe we just want to show the product standing alone by itself. Maybe we want to add some more movement in the front. So we think about different ways of presenting that same message in a more attractive way.
Yeah. And also just kind of like in terms of approach, I feel like thinking of, let's say you've got a static ad that's performing really well. You want to try that emotional entry, or you want to try that same angle in a different way. I feel like something that I try a lot is you take a headline that's performing really well in a static ad and you put it in someone's mouth, right?
Yes.
So now you've got somebody speaking straight to camera saying the same thing. So experience the ultimate smoothness and put an end to razor burn. Worked on your ad, try it in somebody's mouth for that, saying it straight to camera for that first 3 seconds. Another way would be trying it as a question, right? So are you embarrassed of bumpy razor burn? Are you ready to experience the ultimate smoothness? Are you ready to put an end to razor burn? So trying more relatable language, using a question is obviously always great, but also in those examples, trying, a positive, are you ready to experience the ultimate smoothness, versus the negative, are you ready to put an end to razor burn?
Right.
Or are you embarrassed by bumpy razor burn? Yeah.
And then, as we were talking about before, the negative reasons why people like drama, right? Like 3 reasons why I'll never use this brand again, or here's why you should not buy from so and so. Like, those people love. My biggest regret is not trying this brand or this product sooner. Those are also different hooks that light up the the KPIs.
That is such a great call out. I feel like a lot of people don't, I mean, it's a device, right? So it's like, if you're working with a headline that's like 3 reasons you should not use this razor to get rid of razor burn. I've pitched angles like that to a lot of clients who are just like, again, we like to focus on
What?
the positive and no, what do they don't really understand kind of what the angle is there, but it's sort of like you're creating this like interest, you're creating this intrigue of like immediately somebody's like, wait, why shouldn't I use that razor if I want to get rid of razor burn? And then of course the points that you're going through are it has 5 stainless steel blades, comes with a lubricating strip, or whatever it is. It's all the real value propositions. But it's that kind of hooky, sticky kind of opening that gets you watching it.
Exactly. And I mean, we have to be, I guess, somewhat sympathetic towards, teams that are like, we don't want to connect with the negative and we don't want to use fear. You're just understanding what your client is fearful about anyway. You're not scaring them into not using your product, into using your product. You're okay, scrap that. Never mind.
That's okay.
Never mind.
Well, no, I mean, I think that the point that you're talking about is like, being sympathetic is like, quite honestly, I think, yes, there's always a balance that you want to find with using a lot of these
Yes.
tactics. The reality is that when we're talking about, specifically bottom of the funnel digital
Mhm.
marketing, click right here. I'm trying to scale, these kinds of tactics, this sort of high velocity creative testing is so essential to the growth of so many different companies. And it's very idealistic actually to sort of think that you can just opt out of that conversation and be like, nope, in our meeting we decided that our customers like black, blue, and red, and so we're just using black, blue, and red. That's what resonates. And it's like, well, none of that's tested. You haven't tried anything. That's just an idea that
Mm.
you had. I mean, sympathy I got, but I also have a big dose of kind of reality. I think that's really what we're trying to talk about here. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
I love what you were just saying about, like biggest regret. You were kind of focusing on like negative angles, but I think what you also sort of hit on for me was kind of like utilizing trending organic openers, right? This kind of like these sort of like templates for scripts that we see a lot of people using in, on TikTok or Instagram or wherever it is. They're not ads, it's just organic creators. I am constantly amazed by
Mhm.
blank. That's one that you hear. I'm constantly amazed by how smooth my face feels after I use this razor.
Or POV, you just tried this new razor that everyone's talking about, or the viral. The POV, I mean, I can't not stop when it's a question of POV. I just tried something, this new experience that like maybe I haven't had yet that I get to learn about through this person. Um, always gets
Absolutely. Yeah, no, it drags you right in. I mean, they really, I'll just go through just a couple of these, but I mean, they really, once you hear them out loud and you sort of break down kind of the thought behind it, you're like, oh yeah, I actually fall for this all the time. Like, does anybody else have that one blank, right? So does anybody else have that one self-care routine that they can't live without? Because for me, it's this razor. X group has been lied
oh
to.
yes,
That's a good
yes.
one. So like women have been lied to about the price and quality of good razors. Hack your blank in
Yeah,
2024. So hack your self-care routine in 2024 with this incredible
yeah.
razor. That's not a good one for razor. Nobody wants to talk about hacking with a razor, but
Yeah, yeah,
you
yeah.
get the idea.
2024 skincare hack or 2024 beauty self-care hack? I don't know, but definitely the hack and the relevance of just like the top of the year, what we're doing this year.
Again, these are all just like different ways to kind of iterate. You take the one kind of idea for an opening. These are all different ways of just kind of how to think about it in terms of like how can we iterate a bunch of different openings for sort of the same ad. Just a couple more that I wanted to kind of touch on here is really just playing on things that are
Trends,
viral
yeah.
trends. I don't even know if you call them viral trends. Maybe like common concepts, like a podcast is a really good
Mhm.
one. Just seeing this microphone in the screen and somebody speaking with
Yep.
authority is very hooky. And it's kind of like a blank canvas to kind of try out different messaging.
And the green screen is one of my favorite. I feel like we saw so much of that in 2020
Yes.
with people breaking down their conspiracy theories and, whatever it was, you
Yeah,
you have these, keyboard warriors here that all of a sudden became authority figures, but then it worked. Like, we believed a lot of them. And so following that template in the paid sphere has shown and continued to be successful for us.
absolutely. Yeah, the green screen. You're talking about being like, it's kind of like a dirty green screen a lot of times. Green screened in front of a product shot, green screened
Right.
in front of a landing page,
Yes.
pointing at a headline,
Yes.
trying our same headline, but pointing at it and speaking at it. I mean, all different variations. You've got man on the street interviews, you've got game show concepts. You can really easy ways to kind of try out same angles, same messaging, different scenario, different opener. One that I really like that's a native feeling concept is, Monique, what do we call this? It's like when the person has the conversation with themselves.
Yes, conversation with self. That one,
Yes.
future me and past me, like, "Hey, how'd you get that?" "Well, I tried this new thing and you'll see." Like, excellent. Just such a great, like, outlet, or I don't know, package to get a lot of information about, your product out, to show the transformation, very vividly. Excellent.
Yeah, it's a great tactic to use. A great tactic to use if you're trying to educate somebody,
Yeah.
right? Because that dialogue, it's like, it's a really good template to kind of like put like what could otherwise feel like maybe sort of dry value props, or like if your product or service or whatever takes some teaching.
Yeah,
I feel like that's a really good way to test kind of getting your pitch out.
definitely. Definitely.
Kind of breaking this down further, right? So we've given a bunch of different concepts and kind of tactics of like how you might take a top performing headline, put it in somebody's mouth, try it out in a bunch of different ways. Let's talk about like some of our thoughts behind testing actual talent. Yeah.
This is like so huge for me. Like, obviously people want to see themselves reflected in the world around them. They want to see that their brand knows who they are too, right? So if me, an African American woman with big curly hair, I see a skincare brand, I'm gonna be like, with somebody who doesn't look like me, I'm gonna be like, okay, great, I'm glad it works for you. But if I see somebody who looks like me, I'm gonna I'm gonna have questions. I'm gonna want to see her experience too. It's just so important to test different demos, because by showing your brand in the hands of a wide variety of people, you're telling people from those backgrounds or who identify as whoever those people are, that like you see them and that you're holding space for them. That's one side of it. But the other side of it is that, who am I going to believe? Right? We have
Yeah.
a financial services brand, and it just so happens white middle-aged men are like their largest audience. But who do
Mm-hmm.
they want to hear from? Do they want to hear from people who look like
Right.
them? Or do they want to hear from younger people who are aware of the trends and have their ear to the ground? Do they trust somebody with a little more age and
It's a great
authority
point.
and wisdom as them? So again, testing that is going to be so important. Test different ages, test different skin colors, test different hairstyles, even just because of the thumb stop value of that. My skincare brands always teach me so much. Red-haired women have always outperformed every other hair color for the beauty brands that I've worked on. If we have brunette, blonde, black hair, once we throw a red-haired model or talent in there, we cannot beat that. It just becomes our control. Seen it time and time again. It's just one of those things where, yeah, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I think the note that you had sent me was, did you know that redheads have a higher CTR than brunettes, which is
Yeah,
really
it's
just
true.
puts a point on it and kind of makes you get it. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
You and I would be such a great A/B test, though, right? Taking the same script,
Yes.
you've got the same script, have Monique try it, and have me try the same script. Test that, right? Because different talent is going to unlock different demographics, different audiences for you.
And I think outside of talent isn't the quickest one that we go to, but another one that we another one of our very first iterations to test is length, right?
Yes.
In a world of diminishing attention spans, you do have your like VSLs that perform, your longer sales letters, your infomercials, right? That we all hold so near and dear to our hearts. But a lot of times it's how short a time can you get your message through? I've
Yep.
had 20-second ads that I need to iterate on. And it's like, okay, how do I get it down to 15 seconds? Is there a 10-second version of this? And you really,
Yep.
really learn how to distill the most important information about your product that way. It's actually a really great exercise in determining what your key value props are and how to explain your product in literally under 10 seconds.
That's a great point. Yeah. So I mean, definitely testing different lengths and stuff, and short form is definitely the commonly recommended, right? You can't go without testing the long form because
Right.
for certain services, for certain products and things, you do see the long form content performing across YouTube and Facebook. I had a real estate brand that I worked with. We tried like 45-minute to an hour and a half long podcast episodes.
Wow.
We tried running and found really great performance there. So yeah, length is definitely something to dig into. And I agree, Monique. I think that's usually kind of like one of the first tests. Yeah.
Your stops, yeah.
Just kind of pushing forward here. Maybe you want to take us in the lo-fi versus polished. Yeah.
Yes. This is definitely very brand specific, I will say. However, in
Yeah.
general, when you're talking about Facebook advertisements, you want it to look gritty. You want it to look like somebody's Android phone and they're just recording this incredible experience. Trying to take your DSLR out and pretend that this is just happenstance, it creates a lot of dissonance. Make your ads ugly, make them look gritty.
Mm-hmm.
Don't try to have them polished. I think that the time and the era of, $1 million ad budgets is kind of over. And it definitely doesn't have its place on Facebook and TikTok. It needs to look like your next door neighbor did it. I think that brands need to be willing to get their hands dirty a little bit, be willing to come out and play a little bit with the people and pretend that they don't have like huge studio production budgets. Use lower quality camera. There's obviously always test. It's important. Push your limits as far as like how polished you want this to go. I know you mentioned a fitness company example about that once. That was like really, really a great illustration of this.
Yeah, I had another fitness brand who actually very similar issues to the other company that I was talking about. But yeah, presenting a lot of like impossible fitness goals, high quality, high res, polished ads, beautiful sets, fitness models, the whole nine yards. And we just were not hitting goals.
Mhm.
People were not clicking on these ads. Unless we had like some great offer of like free this many months or whatever, people will always
Mhm.
click on those more, right? But so what did we do? We tried some transformational UGC stories, stuff that was shot with the phone. They were the same offers. It was a lot of the same messaging on these ads, and immediately they
Mhm.
rise to the top. That's just one example of something that we see happen time and time again. I know a lot of people feel very resistant to this idea of UGC, but a colleague of ours, Gemma, said this so well, that UGC is a spectrum, you know? So when you're thinking about testing in UGC, see what you're comfortable with. Look at the
Mhm.
creators that are in your niche. Look at other companies, but look at the creators that are in your niche and see,
Mhm.
is there some stuff that they're making that you might feel kind of comfortable testing same or similar concepts.
Yeah.
I've got to say, as we move down this list, I feel like we're getting into some of the categories that are definitely important to test, but I would say like don't get too into your head about testing these because you'll waste a lot of money, right? So like the captions,
Yeah.
okay, so captions are important. You know, you want some, we test a lot of kinetic, animated text, that kind of stuff, switching different styles. You can do, doing split tests with music versus no music. And I shouldn't speak so broadly because you might have an example that that was a really, really important test on. But I will say that like once we get into some of this, like captions, colors of captions,
Yeah.
fonts,
Right.
typography, once we get like really, really into the nitty gritty of these things, what I see a lot of creative teams doing is sort of getting hung up on this part of the conversation, right?
Yeah.
Oh, well, if you say that native text works best, let's do a test between, our brand guideline approved text versus the native feeling text. That's fine. In a lot of scenarios, that's a really appropriate test to go after. And in some scenarios, it's like it's just creative teams kind of fighting tooth and nail to like not have to waver from what they're comfortable with, and you can waste a lot of money, I think, getting into this sort of like going down this kind of like micro testing rabbit hole. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I like you said, unless it's a question of a, super trending caption style, um,
Yeah.
that's gonna just make you look more relevant, then go for it. But definitely don't think of like, okay, what's every single caption style that I could possibly use? I'm just gonna go down the list and test all these. It's not gonna be a gigantic needle mover.
Exactly. Yeah. Same thing with this color blue versus that color blue, or which is just to say, I'm not saying don't try different colors or different text or that kind of thing. I guess what I'm saying is like don't feel like each one needs to be A/B tested to sort of move to the next kind of test. You know what I
Right.
mean? This is a place to maybe be a little bit looser, try some more native feeling styles, or try to kind of loosen up on your ideas a little bit in this area.
I will say though, again, with reference to a certain movie slash toy craze that happened this past summer, if there is an opportunity for you to jump on some of those trends, pink was very important for every single brand in the world this summer, then do it.
That is a great
Yeah.
example. Yes, that is such a great example. But it's not in our brand guidelines. But
I would say make the talent wear that color. Make the talent wear.
that's a good one.
Also, in terms of props, there are certain cups right now that are super important. Doesn't matter if your brand has nothing to do with that. Make sure your talent has that in their hand, because they have this thing in their hand now. They're all of a sudden more relevant. So they're like another place to look for like iterative ideas is just what's trending. It's so important to keep your ear to the ground with that so that you're not shooting in the dark. You're not throwing spaghetti at the wall, but you're just becoming a part of the conversation that's already going on anyway.
That is a beautiful transition to the way that I usually like to kind of wrap up here to, where do we look for trends? Where are places that you and I get good information about this kind of stuff that other people can look to the same. And I think that in this case, my example would be social media. Like I am addicted to my phone. Obviously, I think we all are. But really, I mean, look at, I feel like every trend right now is born on TikTok, right? And then they sort of migrate across platforms. But even if it's just a concept that's kind of born on TikTok, and then you're not seeing the exact thing in Instagram Reels, but you're seeing something, pretty close. I think that those are the places that I kind of get my best ideas, is really just seeing what people are making and creators, and knowing that I'm using the term creator very loosely because I'm really just talking about like my neighbor or my cousin
Right.
or whoever.
No,
Yeah.
100%. There was a time when I would run out of ideas and I would simply just go to TikTok. How are people starting their videos off? Is it that they're like, no, because I thought that blah blah blah. Just that no, because it's telling me that that's how I'm relevant. That's how I'm gonna stop the scroll now. Because for some reason, starting off in the middle of a conversation gets people's attention.
Mm-hmm.
I think at a time TikTok became so saturated that it was difficult to even begin to pick up on those trends. But they're still there. They're still there. You have to look a little bit harder for them. You have to start using hashtags in related, hashtags related to your vertical or to your field or to your pain points, to get an idea of like how people are having this conversation, the language that they're using, the images that are most important to them. And that will definitely give you a ton of ideas as well for iterations.
Definitely. Just one more thing that I kind of wanted to cover here. Monique, you had such a great kind of like process or example of how to use Facebook ad library. Can we talk through that a little bit?
If you go into Facebook ad library and you type in your favorite brand, you will see that they are testing. You will see the same image there with 100 different headlines. You'll see the same headline with 100 different images. Then you'll jump over to Foreplay, which is where you can find a log of, or just like get information on ads that have run, whether in Facebook or Instagram, just through the metaverse and even TikTok now. And it'll tell you how long that they were running, and you'll start to see trends, right? The brand that I am following now, I find their content to be excellent. I look and I see that they have, an ad with a middle-aged woman that ran for about 439 days. They have an ad with a younger woman, maybe a millennial, and that ad ran for about 300 days. But then they have about 20 ads with men in their late 20s. And those ads could be running for like 600 days. And so the reason, like, you begin to understand, why are they only testing all these, brunette men of 20 years old? Because those ads work best, right? They run the longest, they get the highest engagement. Yes, they're willing to test and see if, talking to the female audience or talking through a female audience would work. But at the end of the day, the numbers don't lie. So you use these things, you get an idea, okay, this has been running a long time. It's running for a long time for a reason. It's working for them. So you can get ideas about like iterations from that, what's working for them and why. And it's not even always a question of copying. Sometimes maybe you do want to differentiate yourself because maybe you don't have the same audience as them, but it's important to look at
Right.
How your competition iterates and understand a little bit about why.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's doing your due diligence, right? Because I mean, what you
Yeah.
just said is like, really going back to the platform, going back to Facebook ad library, seeing trends over time. But this is really such a great, like, actionable way to kind of get a sense of what is working for your competitors and also what holes are in the market, what holes are still kind of left there that you yourself can fill. Monique, so many great ideas and strategies and tactics that we talked through here today. Was there anything else that you wanted to touch on before we leave?
I think the last point would have been for me the most important, that if you maybe are starting off with a very small budget, maybe you don't have enough money to test through all of everything, check out your competitors first, see where they're putting their money so that at least you could like jump in where they are. If you find that, you guys have the same audience, but also make a roadmap for yourself and take notes, right? Iterations are not just about variety for the sake of volume. It's about zooming in or, on your audience or your audience. So take notes each time, check
Yeah.
off. Okay, so this worked. Here's how I'm going to take this a little bit further. This didn't work. Maybe I need to try it this way next time, but I'm going to revisit it. If something doesn't work, before you just shut it off and start from the drawing board again, take your time, do a little reflection before you go into the next round of testing, because iterations are about learning, and then learning is what is going to help you scale.
Such a beautiful landing point right there. This is Monique Charles, Creative Director at Jump 450. Again, if you are interested in any of the kind of ideas or philosophies that we're talking about here, and you want access to our blueprint for the ultimate creative multiplier, you can get that in the link below in the description. And if you are a decision maker or company who is looking to explode your own digital growth, you can get in touch with our team at www.jump450.com. We've got a link for that below in the description as well. But thank you so much for being here, and we will see you next time. Thanks, Monique.
Take care. Thanks, Matt. Bye.